Hey guys, so I've got some tips and tricks for you for using the crusting method specifically on a baby. A lot of this stuff is nowhere on the internet, and I figured I should use my experience and my knowledge and share it with you. So first things first is to clean and dry the area around the stoma as much as possible. If it's weeping, it's not going to get super dry, but just pat it dry as much as possible. So in this video, we are using medicated foot powder rather than stoma powder. We use it when his skin is like really irritated and red, and we find that it kind of helps heal his skin. The stoma powder will do the same, but sometimes we just think that the foot powder works a little bit better. The only downside of using foot powder is that it doesn't dry as efficiently as stoma powder, and we have to put on more layers to try and reach the dry crust that we're trying to achieve in this video. So just keep that in mind. So after you apply the foot powder or stoma powder, you're going to tap it around the stoma and all the irritated area, and then you're going to want to blow and tap off all of the excess. So you want to remove everything that's not sticking to the wet, red, irritated skin. Once you've got your first layer of powder on, go ahead and put on your no sting barrier spray. However you apply it, you can buy it in wipes, you can buy it in wands, you can buy it in sprays. We use kind of a combination, so just figure out what works best for you. So after you applied that, you want to wait about 30 seconds to a minute and check for dryness. And you're gonna wait as long as possible and let it dry as much as you can. So a major tip for this crusting method that no one ever told us and you could never read online is that the first couple layers of the powder and no sting might not completely dry. So this first layer we put on still feels a little bit damp, and the second layer is still going to feel a little bit damp, and that apparently is totally normal from our experience. No one ever told us that. We thought we were failing miserably at this crusting method because we could never get the first couple layers to dry. And now we've figured out that you just have to keep adding layers until you do reach that dryness. So we're tapping around this layer and we're feeling that it's pretty dry. Not completely, but good enough. So we are going to add the second layer and tap that around the same exact way that we put the first one on. We want to cover all of the same areas, only the irritated spots. And then we're going to remove all of the excess like we just did on the first layer. We always blow the excess off. Again, make sure you shield your baby's face from that because you'll make a giant cloud of powder. After that second application of powder, then we naturally go into our second application of the no sting, and we're just doing the exact same thing. We're just spraying all around his stoma and then waiting 30 seconds, a minute, a couple minutes, and seeing if it will dry. And once we've decided it's dry enough, we will go ahead and add the third layer. If you want to speed up your drying process, try out using a hairdryer only on the cool setting on baby. But we see that it does help dry, especially the foot powder, because it does take a lot longer to dry than the stoma powder. So if you are having some issues with drying time, then you could try that tip out. But my biggest thing that I want you to take away from this is if you're on the first or second layer, you might not get complete dryness. So try, but don't stress if you don't get there because you will eventually in later layers. So once we've waited a while and let that second layer dry as much as possible, we are going to add our third layer and repeat the same steps, just tapping the powder around the stoma, removing the excess, and then eventually adding the no sting and giving our no sting plenty of time to dry. So we're getting there. This is round 4. And you're catching on at this point. Same thing over and over again. Powder, no sting, until we are achieving that crustiness, until we can say that our layers are completely dry, not like the first couple layers that were partially dry. We want this top layer to be completely dry. So we're going to go into our very last layer after we test the dryness of this one. For the last one, we decided to use stoma powder because it does dry a lot better. So maybe consider doing a combination of foot powder at the beginning and then stoma powder at the end, or just kind of experiment and see what works best for you. For us, the stoma powder just dries a lot better. And sure enough, after we put this last layer on, it was a lot drier than the previous layer. So the goal of this method is to create an artificial scab. Whether you do that in 2 layers or 5, 6, 7 layers, I mean, you just have to keep going until you've reached that dry surface for your bag to stick. I mean, you probably wouldn't believe how much powder we've had to layer on this child before. So just do what works for you as long as it's safe and healthy for the baby. That's what you have to do. So one last tip I have for you for trying to keep this bag on, we have to put a strip paste over our son's scar to keep it even and make sure the bag goes on, evenly. But when we put the bag on, we warm it up first with a hairdryer. And we put it on like the low heat setting for maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and just let it kind of get stickier with the warmth, and it really does help. So maybe try that out. Always test the temperature first before applying it to the baby's skin. You don't want it to burn him or be too hot and make it uncomfortable. But it really does help the wafer mold to his body. So after we apply it, we kind of push down and rub all the little crevices and cracks and curves and just try to make sure that we've put the wafer flush with his skin. So I hope you've learned some useful tricks. Let me know if I missed anything or if you have any specific questions, and good luck with your bag change.